Thanks very much. It's very nice to be here virtually, but I am sorry to miss the cocktails. I'll have to have a warm English beer to make up for it. This is very complementary to what I've heard tonight. The Net Zero Tracker exists to track net zero targets, as it says in its name. I do have some slides. It would be great if we could go to the next one, please. And then the next. Thank you very much. So the Net Zero Tracker aims to track what we view as the key stakeholders in the transition to net zero. So that's countries, all of the countries that have signed up to the UNFCCC, then regions, so the biggest 25 emitting countries, the regions in those countries, cities with a population over 500,000, and then most importantly for this evening, companies. So we track the Forbes 2000 as well as the top 100 private companies. And we track them first to see if they have a net zero target, and then if they do, we look at a series of metrics to see how robust those are. If we could go to the next slide, please. So by having those metrics, we are able to see how well we are doing en route to net zero. And we do this much like other initiatives have spoken about this evening through our own analysis. So you can see up in the top right corner, our net zero stocktake of 2024. We do a report every year kind of looking at the landscape of net zero targets. But we also make our data freely available to anyone who wants to use it. It's currently freely available from our website, and lots of people have been using it, banks and consultancies, but then also journalists and activists, etc. I think I read in the newspaper just this week someone using our data. What is most exciting about it is that we have a broad view of the entire landscape kind of, and are able to look at how kind of country, regions, cities, and companies are relating to each other to see whether or not there are differences within geographies. If I could have the next slide, please. In addition to having this database that is available, we also try to make net zero kind of as understandable as possible. So something that we recently did was look across all of the standards, voluntary standards, and have a look at where there was alignment and where there wasn't. The idea trying to kind of give a bit more clarity to people who are trying to understand what the standards are, particularly kind of trying to showcase that there's a lot of good work out there. And if we can go to the next slide, we're really big on showcasing the entire ecosystem. There's no point, as someone earlier said, in replicating work. So we aim to showcase what other people in the ecosystem are doing. So you can see that we signpost. So for example, on our country pages, we link to the Climate Action Tracker, which, as many of you may know, tracks very in detail some country pledges. But then we also look at, for example, Influence Map and link out to them because they give very good data on lobbying, etc. The reason we do this is also to kind of fill out our profile to give a full sense of the race to zero starting line, because we don't have any data on that. And it didn't make sense, right, to replicate data. Next slide, please. So that's what we're doing at present, but where are we going next? There are kind of three ways in which we're thinking about the future. On the left, you can see that in the pipeline report, this was a report that we released at COP28 about fossil fuel phase-out pledges. The idea being we have been tracking pledges to net zero, but we're also thinking about implementation. And one way that we can kind of track implementation is through phase-out pledges. We did this as a once-off. We operate on a tiny shoestring budget. So we got some bolt-on funding to do this and collected data on fossil fuel phase-outs. We'd like to continue to do that on an ongoing basis. I should say that our data is updated continually. So whenever there are new updates, for example, the NDCs that just came out at COP29, we update them kind of as they happen. So we'd like our fossil fuel phase-out data to be as instantaneous. Then in the middle, you can see the equity and just transition commitments in South Africa. This report will be coming out in January, so you're getting a little taste of it. As you may hear from my accent, I'm from South Africa. And we did this report on equity and the just transition, looking again across countries, regions, cities, and companies. The idea being that we are trying to make our equity indicator a bit more refined. So what we'd really like to do is refine all of our indicators to be more useful and more nuanced. And so we're thinking a lot about that in the kind of future and where we're going. And then the final thing before I leave you to your cocktails is on our website, you can click on top right corner to a link to Chat Net Zero, which is like ChatGPT, but we built it ourselves and it draws from our data and our reports. Basically, you can ask it all sorts of questions about net zero and it answers. It's very fun. We're hoping to use that AI that we've been building there to continue to make our data collection more efficient. So right now we rely on trained data collectors from around the world who volunteer and are trained by us. And they have to meet certain requirements to do so. But we are moving towards having them more as validators rather than collectors, and using AI to collect that to make sure that we really are almost instantaneous. And that is all I have to say. Thank you very much for having me.